The mornings are cool and still. In this quiet, exclusive resort community, bordered on three sides with the warm Atlantic Ocean, the normally gracious pace of life seems calmer, even more refined. But during the last week in September, the triathletes arrive, quickening the pulse on Hilton Head. For the third year in a row, the island is host to the Bud Light U.S. Triathlon Series National Championships, an event of great importance within the young sport, the first jewel of triathlon's Triple Crown. And it all starts here at the Hyatt Regency Hilton Head on Hilton Head Island. In 1986, a tiny blonde from Colorado named Kirsten Hansen made a dramatic debut as a professional triathlete. Despite a full-time job and her almost complete lack of triathlon experience, she won race after race and ended her season with a dramatic win in Hilton Head. For Hansen, it was a storybook ending to what had been a storybook year. In the men's field, there was Scott Molina, the Terminator, whose win in Hilton Head last year was the best bet in the sport. Five-time winner of the national championship, the only man to ever hold the USTS title, Molina's dominance of the short-distance triathlon scene was so complete, his margins of victory were so large, that he often crossed the finish line in apparent nonchalance, saving himself for the next race. When it came to the Bud Light USTS, the Terminator was the undisputed master. But there was disappointment at last year's race, too. Linda Buchanan, women's national champ in 1985, collided with a car on the course. There were no serious injuries, but the crash stopped Buchanan's season cold, a sobering reminder that the hazards of triathlon are not confined to simply distance and speed. In 1987, a new star emerged in the men's field, Mike Pigg, a tough 23-year-old who roared out of the hills of Northern California and cycled the best professional triathletes into the ground. At the USTS season opener in Miami, Pigg terminated the Terminator. Molina was a distant second, with two-time Ironman champ Scott Tinley far back in third. The season and the sport had a new hero. In Miami, Kirsten Hansen met Sylvian Puntos from Canada, winner of the USTS title back in 1983. After a long absence, Puntos was a factor once again. Still, Hansen remained the dominant figure on the bike all season, challenging stronger runners to chase her down if they could. Then there was Mark Allen. After 3 series wins, Pigg met Allen in Atlanta and lost. They met again in Baltimore. The stakes had risen, but the result was just the same.
Somewhere between 3 and 4, I finally got my strength back. My stride loosened up, it lengthened out. I caught my breath, and I really poured it on. I felt good at that point. And then by mile 4, I was maybe 10 seconds behind him. I kind of rested behind him to see what pace he was running. And then I thought, okay, here I go, about 4.5 miles. And at 4.5, I caught him. And right as I caught him, he surged. And I thought, the guy has been sandbagging it. He's been waiting for me, and now that I'm here, he's going to pull away from me. But I thought, I'll just stick with him and see what I can do. I stuck with him, and then he backed off his surge. I surged, he couldn't stay with it, and that was it.
Hansen had problems of her own in Baltimore. Colleen Cannon, the USTS star in 1983 and 84, outran Hansen and established herself as a threat for the first time in 3 years. No woman had ever won the USTS title twice. Was Colleen Cannon the woman to spoil Hansen's bid to be the first?
Welcome to the 1987 Bud Light USTS National Championship from Hilton Head Island, South Carolina. It was a beautiful week here on Hilton Head Island. That is until today, where the high winds picked up, forcing a change in the current, and that has caused race officials to move the swim start from south to north so that the athletes would be able to swim with the current rather than against it. Hello, everyone. I'm John Paul Della Camera. I'm your host for today's championship. It's an event that will include some of the top finishers in previous USTS events, together with winners in the Tri-Fed competitions that were held earlier this season. It's a beautiful course here on Hilton Head Island. It's also a challenging course, especially with the 10-kilometer run, and that's because of the many different road surfaces that the athletes have to contend with. For more on that, let's go to our race coverage commentator, Mike Plant.
The run course here at Hilton Head presents some very interesting problems for the triathletes because they come off their bike after that real hard, flat bike ride, and they have to deal first with asphalt, road surface, then a little bit of soft sand, then hard-packed beach sand, then a little soft sand again, then more asphalt, and then fairway grass. Varying terrain, then back on asphalt to finish the event. It's very tough on tired legs. It's very tough on some of the athletes' minds and their ability to concentrate on the run. This is a course for the experienced runner. You're going to see some very interesting stuff out here today.
to tell you the truth, the toughest part of this thing for a lot of the triathletes is to swim. For only one reason: fear. It's a little bit crazy sometimes swimming in the ocean. The big problem is everybody's starting all at once now. The athletes here in this race will start in waves no more than 200 at a time, but it still gets a little crazy in there. They kick and they gouge and they crawl all over each other. Of course, then you get loosened up, and then you get to the first buoy, and the whole thing tightens up again, real tight, and the athletes kind of have to take the correct line to the buoy and fight their way through once again until they get some clear water. It gets a little nuts out here. Some of the poor swimmers, they have one thing on their mind: get finished with the swim. Then they're on dry land, they're okay.
The swim start begins our triathlon. Note that it's a 1.5-kilometer swim, and the change going from north to south because of the current problems today. Then it switches to the bike, the 40K bike, and you'll notice two problem areas, a couple of bridges, and a turnaround that the bikers will have to negotiate. Then it's on to the complicated 10K run, the run course that features running on asphalt, then sand, asphalt, grass, and asphalt again.
On race day, Mike Pigg makes last-minute adjustments to his machine of destiny. If he is shoulder-to-shoulder with Alan on the run, his cause is lost. Scott Tinley arrives in the transition area, looking loose and at ease, but it's strange to see him and not his old friend in Scott Molina. Overtrained and over-raced, Molina's had a terrible season and has chosen not to defend his long-held USTS title. On the beach, the competitors prepare. Wetsuits are everywhere, although the water temperature is almost 80 degrees. The suits are not for warmth, but rather for buoyancy and speed, and they are a controversial issue in the sport. But their use has been allowed all season long, and they are permitted at the championships as well. Even the fastest swimmers will wear them, out of grudging necessity, not choice, victims of a kind of high-tech triathlon arms race. What the competition gets, you'd better get too, fast. The pro men are off. The swimmers fight through the waves, struggling for the best line to the first buoy. Size here can be just as important as speed, for it is in the early stages of the swim that triathlon becomes a contact sport. There is no place on the prize list for the faint of heart. The first buoy is always difficult. This time there is some confusion as well. The lifeguards are on hand for safety, but they are also there to block the inside of the buoy to keep the swimmers to the outside of the course. That doesn't happen, and several athletes gain a few precious seconds on the inside. There's hardly time for complaint. The last-minute change in the swim course has made things tough for everyone. The man with the early lead is 20-year-old Brooks Clark from Westchester, Pennsylvania. An age group national champion last year, Clark turned pro in '87 and has been a tough man to beat in the late season. What he'd like most of all is the national championship. It is a slim hope for a rookie, but for the moment he's in the lead and he's stroking hard to stay there. Behind Clark, without a wetsuit, is Rob Knackel, a muscular former All-American swimmer from Indiana. Knackel is happy to have someone to follow. It is usually he who sets the pace in the first event. Allen is in third, drafting at Knackel's feet, biding his time, with the rest of the field strung out for 100 yards to the rear. There is no way for Allen to know, of course, the position of Mike Pigg, although he can feel the occasional tap of fingers on his toes. Could that be him? Allen hopes not, for as Pigg is on him now, it could be a long day indeed.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
The women start. With a 5-minute delay, the women's field struggles through the waves. Hansen is in the thick of it from the beginning. Behind them, the field of almost 1,500 age group competitors waits on the beach for their turn. They will start in waves, no more than 200 at a time, a system that makes the start safer, the bike course less congested, and allows the competitors within specific age group to identify each other. How competitive are the age groups at the national championships? Last year, in the men's 60 and over division, the first 3 places were separated by a mere 14 seconds. In the women's field, as in the men, there is some confusion at the first buoy, but the race goes on. At the front of the entire parade, Brooks Clark moves on. He's dropped Mackle, and the rapid turnover of his arms belies the 31 miles of running and cycling still to come. But not every competitor approaches the first event with such enthusiasm.
Including this age group national champion, Cynthia Galens, a 19-year-old from Rockford, Illinois, who admits to a fear of the swim.
I usually go into the swim thinking I just want to get this over with and I want to get on my bike. So it's kind of a bad attitude, but it's pulled me through so far.
Illinois' Cynthia Galens, and we'll have more coming up from Hilton Head, so stay with us.
Pro men approach the end of the swim, the end of the 1,500 meters, the first event. Brooks Clark gets there first, dolphining through the shallow water, saving both time and energy by not standing up too soon and simply plodding his way to shore. He was fourth at the Chicago Bud Light USTS in late July, behind Allen, Pig, and Dave Scott. A breakthrough race for Clark, a dose of the triathlon limelight, hardly in keeping with his tender age. He's been at the top ever since, racing not just for prize money, but for first place. As he looks behind him, wondering about the rest of the field, he must also wonder if today will be his day, another breakthrough, the race of his life. When you're 20 years old, the possibilities are endless. Ten seconds behind Clark comes the heavy-set Mackle. Then, leading his own small group, Mark Allen in third. Allen is where he needs to be, where everyone knew he would be, close to the front. But where is Mike Pig? The clock ticks ominously on, and still there is no sign of the red cap that marks Pig as the leader of the season-long Coke Grand Prix. Finally, a minute and a half back, he makes his appearance in the middle of a large pack. He should be closer, and he knows it. A minute and a half is way too much time. Allen has his first advantage of the day. For now, the transition area in the high parking lot becomes the center of everyone's attention. When triathlons first began, transition areas were places of careful preparation for the next event. The triathletes took time to shower and to change clothes. No longer. Brooks Clark may struggle a bit with his wetsuit, but he'll add nothing to his uniform except a helmet and a pair of cycling shoes, which are already secured to his pedals. All you add is feet. Clark hops on his bike and heads out. Mackle, who swam without a wetsuit, shoots into the lead. The rubber giveth, and the rubber taketh away. Close behind, Allen, in the white helmet, is in the hunt too. If anything, he's gained a few seconds. As he pedals off, the transition area behind him begins to fill with the frantic energy of triathletes with too much to do and too little time in which to do it. The trick is concentration and control under pressure. Some handle it well, some don't. Scott Tinley is one of the best transition artists in the business, although he's had his own problems at times. In one race in 1985, he racked his bike and inadvertently covered his shoes with his rear wheel. He lost 20 seconds looking for them and lost the race to Scott Molina by 20 seconds. There's never a very large margin for error. Mike Pig arrives and fights his own battle with the suit. His ankles, like those of the other competitors, are coated with Vaseline, so the rubber slides off his wet skin easily. He takes a moment to clip his helmet, another moment to set his foot in his shoe. Then he's on his bike and away, rising out of his seat in his eagerness to be gone, in search of Mark Allen, and he hopes in search of a national championship. In his wake, the controlled chaos of the transition area continues, and the frustration begins. Bradford Rex has come out of the water to find himself with a punctured tire. An easy thing to fix, perhaps, on any day but the biggest race of the season. Triathlon rules prohibit outside aid, so Rex, a third-level pro who sees prize money all too infrequently, must fix the flat himself. He'll see no prize money today either. Even if he gets himself out on the road, he is already out of the race. On the narrow road leading to Highway 278, Brooks Clark settles first into a rhythm and flies past Mackle. Then Mackle too is set and begins to hammer away, making up the lost ground. The strange handlebars are the latest in aerodynamic technology. They force the riders into a sleek, compact, downhill ski racing position and are said to make the better riders a minute or more faster over 25 miles. Like the wetsuits, they are indispensable. All the top athletes must use them or be left behind. Driving hard, Knackel flies back into first place. He drops Clark like a stone. He is strong and 10-15 pounds heavier than the other top men, so the flat Hilton Head bike course will play to his advantage. Knackel has been a journeyman pro all year long, leading in the swim, setting the pace on the bike in the early stages, then fading to the rear. But he's been holding on longer and longer in the late season, and today he wears a look of confidence and grim purpose. He won't give the lead away, that's for sure. Someone is going to have to take it. While the professional men fight for position on the bike course, the pro women begin to emerge from the water. Far out in front is Eni Jones, long one of the best swimmers in the sport, although not one of the recognized contenders for a top place in Hilton Head. She runs towards the beach, then takes a new tack in the art of wetsuit removal. She sits in the shallow water and strips it from the legs on the spot. 1987 is likely to be the last year of unrestricted wetsuit use in triathlons. Discussions are already underway to set mandatory minimum and maximum water temperatures for the use of the suits, a rule that will threaten a new industry, for there are manufacturers now producing things called speed suits, specifically designed to give swimmers a higher profile in the water, with thinner layers of rubber in the upper body and thicker layers around the hips and legs. 30 seconds in back of Jones, a group containing several of the top women exits the water. Colleen Cannon is among them. So is Kirsten Hansen and Diane Girard. Liz Bowman and Jan Ripple, two more threats, are close behind. Linda Buchanan, the national champ in 1985, who was expected to compete this year at Hilton Head, is injured and did not start the race. Neither did Sylvian Puntos, who was holed up in British Columbia, Canada, training for the upcoming Ironman in Hawaii. Their absences have made Hansen an even stronger favorite. To have a chance for a win, Colleen Cannon must stay close to Hansen on the bike, something that no woman in the sport has been able to accomplish since July. As for Eni Jones, this is her moment in the sun, and it's fading rapidly. She struggles with her shoes, taking time the men did not. Losing time, the women coming hard behind her are certain to make up. The new breed of triathlete is good not only at all three sports, but in between too. Even as Jones, the swimmer, the single sport specialist, heads out in first place, the focus of the competition is already elsewhere. Still in third, but heading for the front, Mark Allen settles into his own pace. On a course like Hilton Head, the leaders will average almost 28 miles an hour for 25 miles, holding back almost nothing for the 10-kilometer run to come. It's what they train for, of course. Triathletes have always been masters of endurance. They must be masters of speed now as well, and Allen is one of the best at both. A few years ago, his training partners in San Diego nicknamed him the Grip, short for the grip of death. If you ride with Mark Allen, be prepared to move. He doesn't have too many speeds short of all out.
One of the more familiar faces in the crowd, Mark Allen.
When you're out there, when the gun goes off, it's blood and guts, you're ready to win, and you're going to do whatever it takes to win the race. You're going to go as hard as it takes to win the race, because it's important to all of us. But I think the reason that we get along as well as we do outside the race situation is that we all know the training that we individually put in to prepare for these races, and we know that everybody else has done the same thing, and out of that you have to have respect for the other guys, because it's hard, it's tough, it takes your day, it takes a lot of time out of your life, and you have to respect that in anybody else that can do that.
Mark Allen, one of the top triathletes since 1982. The action will continue from Hilton Head in just a moment.
Rob Knackel, the swimmer, is having the race of his life. 10 miles into the bike ride, he's not only still in first, but he's actually put some time on Mark Allen and Brooks Clark. He has not, however, put time on Mike Pigg, who like an angry wasp has buzzed into second place and is heading fast for first. A point that has been made many times this week in Hilton Head is that Pigg needs a minute and a half lead on Allen off the bike if he hopes to win. Pigg can hardly argue with the assessment, but if he keeps this up, he'll have his minute and a half and more. The riders are on the first and biggest of the two bridges that connect Hilton Head Island with the mainland. It's a new feature of the championship course this year, the nearest thing to a hill within 50 miles. Pig senses that Allen has not joined him in the chase, but he has no way of knowing for sure. Not yet, anyway. Mackel, though, is a mere 100 yards ahead.
The turn is of technical and tactical importance. It's an abrupt, all but full stop at the end of a sloping downhill, followed by a shallow climb back to the top of the second bridge.
On the downhill leading to the turn, Pig finally catches Mackel, turning first, then coming out of his seat to press the advantage. He's hardly surprised when Mackel comes with him, but he gets a start when Allen and Clark whiz by in the opposite direction, just seconds later. The race is still very close. For Mike Pig's taste, much too close. He presses even harder. Over the first bridge, then over the second, Mackel hangs tough at Pig's side, refusing to let the race get away from him. Pig is frustrated at first, then impressed, finally content to let Mackel stay with him, if he can. The pace is relentless, and the gap between Pig and his pursuers begins to widen. Allen has begun to worry. His legs are heavy, unresponsive. He is forced to watch as the two men in front of him move away, a sight that Allen has not had to deal with too many times in his career.
This is
10 minutes behind the men, Kirsten Hansen is alone. There is simply no one in the field, on this day at least, who can offer a challenge. Similar to Pig in her competitive approach, Hansen is not the most stylish rider, choosing instead to hammer away relentlessly, gaining time instead of points for form. On a flat course like Hilton Head, the tiny Hansen, all 5 feet 3 inches of her, all 100 pounds, would normally be expected to give ground to her heavier rivals. But she pushes huge gears, making up in strength what she lacks in size, flying by the slower men professionals who started the day with a 5-minute head start. With her D.H. Scott bars, her disc wheel, her lightweight bike, and his tight, well-defined little body, Kirsten Hansen is the triathlete personified, the epitome, the high-tech super jock. Technology is central to the sport of triathlon, and the sport's eager acceptance of the newest and most unique technology has been a welcome shot in the arm for, among others, the bicycle manufacturing industry.
The Trek Bike Factory in rural Waterloo, Wisconsin may seem an unlikely place to find advanced bicycle technology, but it is here. Don't use the word welding around Trek people. Frames are glazed or bonded aluminum. Other words spoken here are chrome alloy or carbon fiber composite. And while some of the molding and shaping is done by highly accurate machines, much of the work is still done the way the Wright brothers must have done it, by hand.
We have come up with a blend of automated manufacturing procedures, but you still can't avoid the inevitable of some amount of handwork to bring the bikes up to what the people in the marketplace expect from very exotic quality products.
A finished Trek bike will vary in price from $300 to $2,000. Frames are basically the same, but advanced hardware, handlebars, gears, wheels, and pedals will make the difference in cost. 250 bikes will be assembled here today, and while the basic shape of a bicycle has changed very little in the last 100 years, the design changes have made riding so much easier.
The machine definitely works in the favor of the rider now. You don't have to work against as much friction or inefficiencies pedaling a modern-day bicycle around as maybe was the case when our parents were riding bicycles.
Of course, when our parents were riding bicycles, they never rode them like this. And hardly anybody rides them like this. With 6 miles left to go on the bike ride, Mike Pig is in command of the race. Rob Mackel is gone. Along with the rest of the championship field, he has been unable to answer the assault of the most aggressive cyclist in the world of international distance triathlons.
Mike Pig, a recognized nice guy in the circuit, talks about how different he is on race day.
You become a real individual in the race. You know, you don't care about anything except going fast and yourself, and that's it. And temper, you know, I don't have a temper and I don't really shoot off the mouth, but in the race, something just comes out of you, you know. I mean, I was surprised myself, like, oh, you don't do that, you know, just after I say that. And so, it's a different world when you race.
Mike Pig leading the pack in Hilton Head. Our coverage will continue, so stay with us.
With 13 starting waves in the swim, each 5 minutes apart, many of the age group competitors are just starting their bike ride as Mike Pigg nears the end of his, racing down Queens Folly Road toward the transition area in the Hyatt parking lot. He'll win a $500 team wins bonus for coming off his bike in the lead, a handy bit of extra cash that Pigg has grown accustomed to this season. He's raced in 11 of the 12 regular season Bud Light USTS events this year, and he's come off the bike in first every time. So the question here at Hilton Head has not been so much whether Mike Pigg would come off of the lead, but rather how big a lead. And that question will be answered, no doubt, very quickly. The spectators crane for a look as Pigg rounds the turn. Is Allen in sight? How far back is Mark Allen? Pigg himself has no time for questions. If Allen is too close, he will know soon enough, and the race for first place will be over, and the pain of competition will be sharpened by the pain of defeat. But until that happens, until Allen goes by or until Pigg crosses the finish line alone, there is nothing to do but run. Pigg's transition is fast. He stops his bike, pulls his shoes on, grabs his shirt, and goes. 10 seconds. Now it's Allen's turn. A look up the road, and there he is, breaking out from behind Macklin and Clark, driving toward the Hyatt parking lot. It's a bad sign, for Allen at least, that he is not alone. He's been able to drop everyone but Pigg all season long. But there was a sharpness to him, a snap that seemed missing on the bike course today, an impression that now stands confirmed. On the other hand, this is a triathlon. It takes 3 events to win the race. Heavy legs on the bike don't always translate into heavy legs on the run. Sometimes, in fact, just the reverse is true. And Allen is one of the most experienced veterans in the business. A 5-time winner of the Nice Triathlon in France, second last year to Dave Scott at the Bud Light Ironman in Hawaii. The man won't panic. He's been in tight situations before. Allen heads off with 1 minute and 40 seconds to make up. Mike Pigg has grabbed his precious 1.5 minute lead. The question is, can Allen grab it back? 10 minutes behind Allen, Kirsten Hansen flies up Queens Folly Road, her fierce attack belying the huge gap between herself and the next woman. This is Hansen's style. She'll go all out until the race ends, big margin or not. Still, today is special. She's had a tremendous ride, just a little over an hour for 25.6 miles. And while she's not the best runner in the sport, she's not far off. The likelihood of someone being able to make up a margin like this is slim. The race for second place in the women's field is still hot, but as Kirsten Hansen leaves the transition area, the race for first is all but over. For the moment, the leader in the fight for second among the women is Jan Ripple from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, a solid-looking 31-year-old who's had quite a bike ride of her own. The oldest of the top female triathletes, a former gymnast, competitive swimmer, and springboard diver, Ripple is something of a fitness phenomenon. She's also the very attentive mother of 3 children, which makes her something of a lifestyle phenomenon as well. Almost 3 minutes behind Hansen in this race, Ripple's thoughts, realistically, should be more about the runners in back of her than the one in front. Although after a season plagued with mechanical difficulties, she's probably pleased to have gotten this far. Pleased, but certainly not content. After a brief nod to a sore back, the new handlebars are fast, but they aren't built for comfort. Ripple is off. There are 6 miles of hard work still to go.
Next, the beach part of the run course. This is about 3/4 of a mile in length. It's hard, packed sand. The advantage here is that the athletes can see where they are in terms of position. The beach run goes past the Hyatt Regency and then on to the pavement for the rest of the run course.
2 miles into the run, Mike Pigg is holding tight to his minute 40 lead, and the possibility of a national title, a possibility he would not have even considered back in May, is beginning to grow in his mind. Training through the summer with Mark Allen in Boulder, Colorado has helped a lot. He's a smoother runner now than he was in June. Faster, certainly, but more efficient, too, a critical issue for a triathlete. But the big factor for Mike Pigg in 1987 has been his relentless consistency. He's not had a single bad race, and he's held on to the Coke Grand Prix red jersey since the season opener in Miami. Now, in Hilton Head, it's looking more and more like he'll end the year the way he began it, with a win. Third place, the leader for a long time in the bike ride, is Rob Mackel. He's falling farther and farther behind. It'll be tough for Mackel to finish even in the top 10 today. Mike Pigg, meanwhile, hammers on. 3 years ago, he was a mechanic's helper at a truck stop near his home in Arcata, California. He'd tried junior college, but he was not doing much more than filling a seat. His heart wasn't in it. So he quit school and became a triathlete, a gamble against dubious odds that has paid off big. Now on the run course, Mike Pigg wonders how far back is Mark Allen.
I want to know how many minutes I'm ahead. Anyway?
127.
Ahead?
127. The news was almost too good to be true. Is Mark Allen really still that far back?
There are more than 1,500 athletes competing for the national championship here on Hilton Head, and they represent some 47 states plus 7 foreign countries, including a group of athletes from Japan. They're here on behalf of the Japanese Triathlon Federation. We'll continue our coverage here on Hilton Head in just a moment, so stay with us.
Still leaving professional men scattered helplessly in her wake, Hansen drives relentlessly on, adding to her lead. This is her day. There's no one in the field who's going to be able to take the win away from her. Her second national title is only a matter of time. Hansen's style on the run, like on the bike, is not particularly form-oriented. She's a tough runner. Her elbows high, her arms back. The photographers love her because they can see her coming from a long way away. The other women are hardly ones to judge. They can only watch from behind. In the distance is Jan Ripple, still firmly in second place. It's where she finished the bike ride. It's where she hopes to finish the entire day.
Perhaps an unlikely candidate to be a top triathlete, this mother of 3 talks about how she began her career.
I was always a swimmer and had done a little bit of track and field as a junior high school student. And so after we had our third child, she was about 11 weeks old, I saw there was a triathlon in my city. So I decided to enter it. And I got hooked. I loved it. And I had a really good race.
And she's having a good race today. Jan Ripple, currently in second place.
Toshiyuki Nakayama is one of a group of triathletes from Japan who have been invited to compete in Hilton Head Island. Toshi, as he is known to his American friends, is one of Japan's best in this sport.
I like hot. I like hot humor because the Japanese summer is more hotter and more humid. So I love.
Driving hard, concentrating on carrying his stride up the sharp little hill, Mike Pigg comes off the golf course and heads for home. He's tired. He's never worked harder in his life, but a quick glance down the fairway tells him that a win is his. There's no one in sight. He could save himself, perhaps. There are more big races ahead. But as the finish line comes into sight, and as the noise of the crowd begins to fill his head, he picks up the pace and drives even harder, racing to the biggest win of his brief career. In second place, Mark Allen, racing hard to the end. It's been a long day.
Nice race. That was tough out there today. I'm telling you, Mike Pigg put on a show. Mark Allen, for once, the first time all season, had to sit back and watch it happen. Kenny go on third place.
And Ken Block from Westchester, Pennsylvania, in third.
National champions.
For Pigg, the celebration has to wait just for a minute while he waits for his teammate, Harold Robinson, at the finish line. And of course, in first, Kirsten Hansen. It was hers from midway in the bike course all the way through the run. There was nobody even close. The first woman ever to win the Bud Light USTS national title 2 years in a row.
How many people are enjoying it? That's
Almost 5 5 minutes behind Hansen, Jan Ripple has managed to hang on to second place. It's the best race of her season. A wonderful, wonderful race.
Jan Ripple. Well, congratulations. We have 2 women in so far. We have a third finisher coming up.
Thank God.
Approaching the finish line in third is Colleen Cannon from Boulder, Colorado. Cannon had a good race. She finished third overall, but she's going to be assessed a 5-minute penalty for drafting during the bike ride. And 5 minutes is a lot of time. The 5-minute penalty will take Cannon out of the prize money. Will put her back in 15th place. Instead, the third place today will go to Joy Hansen. Joy Hansen is the comeback athlete really of the year. She had some emotional problems at the beginning of last season and has worked her way right back into the very top of the female triathlon world.
Oh, good job. Way to go.
Joy Hansen, one of the sport's top performers, has had to redefine winning.
Well, actually, my definition of winning is different than first place. My definition of winning is that if I go out there and I've done my homework and I go as fast as I can, I'm a winner.
By her definition, Joy Hansen is definitely a winner today. The action continues in a moment from Hilton Head, South Carolina.
The race that triathletes all over the country are beginning to call simply the Nationals. All told, there will be 22 age group national champions crowned today at Hilton Head.
And one of the hopefuls is 39-year-old Maury Banks of Vermont, who talks about keeping up with the changes in the sport.
I've made the changes. I've made some real nice advances in my bike. I have a wetsuit and I have all the technological changes. I would prefer not to have to do that. I would like to have a rule that says the age groupers should have certain limit on what they can do mechanically to enhance their performance, because I don't like the pressure of having to spend more money for my family to be competitive.
Maury Banks from Vermont.
And the natural beauty of Hilton Head, highlighted by the demanding run course. The triathletes at this stage of the game are fighting for places. The different age groups are marked by different letter codes on the backs of their calves so that runners behind can see who they're racing against. They didn't plan, however, on having to race against a family plopped in the middle of the beach on the run course. In any race, in any triathlon, water and aid stations are of critical importance. The athletes need to stay cool inside by drinking cold water, and they need to stay cool outside by putting as much as they can over their head. And here's Uncle Sam offering aid to needy triathletes. Among the faces in the crowd on this day, Paul McDevitt from Springfield, Illinois, whose challenge is obvious. He is competing in this triathlon with only one arm.
Next day, good conditions. Just be too many people in front of me, that's all.
Cameraman Joe Harowitz carefully approaches the question everyone is asking. Did Paul compete in the swim? Maybe this man was on a relay team, meaning he didn't have to do all 3 events, but we got our answer.
Are you in the relay? Yeah. 40-44. How was the swim? Slow, but okay. That's where all these tough guys came from. Good competition.
Here's another great story. Gary Clark, a special invitee to this year's championships. He will finish near the bottom. But he's the first one to tell you it couldn't matter less. Gary Clark has had a heart transplant and lives and competes with the heart of another man. The new twist of the story is this man, Jimmy Moore, who a short 18 months ago also had his failing heart replaced with another one. Jimmy also now competes in triathlons, but today has come as a fan of Gary Clark's, the man who he says has changed his life.
On the phone 3 weeks ago. This man right here next to me did his first triathlon, so now there's 2 of us, and he did it. And I'm just so happy, and it just makes me it can be done, and just isn't one person, and look at him, he's beautiful.
I was real depressed because everybody was telling me to sit back, take it easy, be happy you're alive, and don't push it. So when I found out what Gary did, it was really great, inspired me, and he's meant a lot to me all the way through this.
Being able to get out and be active teaches you how to have good judgment and how far to go and what you can do. Maybe triathlons aren't for everybody, but it does give a message that you can do something. Maybe a long walk, but something.
Right.
And he's looking forward to going out now and doing some rock climbing, some other things and so forth that he loves to do. And that's the key thing, and the importance of the quality of life.
And here's 61-year-old Rudy Schuster from Norfolk, Virginia. Rudy Schuster was the first place in his age division, 60 and over, in last year's championships. He'd like to repeat that finish. Rudy does more than just participate. He's a competitor.
Rudy Schuster, a very young 61.
And that still is a little boy and an old man who likes to compete and try to come in first if possible.
First last year, third in 1987. The age group competition just keeps getting tougher and tougher.
What do you think of all this?
Great. Wonderful. You don't mind all the people in your front yard?
No, not when they look like they look. I'm from North Carolina, too. We're down. Nice water!
Good ride. Congratulations.
Come on!
All right.
Nice water, come on, you're almost there.
For Mike Pigg, a national championship, a win over Mark Allen. It was like a dream. Could it have gone any better? Probably not.
At the end of the swim, I'd like to be within a minute of the lead guy.
That part didn't quite work out. A minute 36 back and worried.
At the end of the bike, I'd like to be a minute ahead of everyone, or 2 minutes. I'll even take 5. It would be nice.
He didn't get 5, but he got more than a minute 30. He was right on schedule. What he needed now was a great run. And he got it. Mike Pigg, the national champion, with room to spare.
This has been an unbelievable year for you. When you think about it, at the beginning of the year, you said all you wanted to do was be among the top pros, maybe the top 4 or 5 pros. Now you're number 1. How do you stay there? How do you train for next year? Because everybody next year will be looking for you.
That's fine. I know how I'm going to train. They got to work to earn it to get me. I know what I need to do, and I'm going to improve that much more next year, too. So I'm not worried about next year at all. I got going to go take 2 months off with a big smile on my face and a good feeling and enjoy it, and then come back training hard in January.
You're supposed to be a great runner, and that's where you overtook Mike Pigg in Baltimore. What was the difference today? His time on the bike, was it too much of a lead for you?
He had a real good bike, but when it came to the run, I just didn't have that snap that I usually feel like I have on the run. My training's been going really well, but maybe I was a little bit overtrained, or, Also, he had a great race. It would have been tough to beat him even if I was on all the way today.
I think I was about 8th to 10th coming out of the water, which actually I was pretty comfortable with that. And I heard maybe I was a minute 15, maybe a minute 30 down, but once we got out on the highway, I saw kind of a clump of about 4 women. So, being able to see a bunch of them, I knew I was in good striking distance. So I got through them, and maybe there were 2 more women another mile down the road, and caught them, and then was right with the lead woman motorcycle. When at the turnaround on the bike, I felt like I needed a little more of the lead, so I just dug deeper and really worked hard on that way home on the bike ride. Well, the swim was a little scary for me. I have a swim background, and the women were on the left and the right, and we all managed to get in together, and I got dunked under at the start of the race, and I couldn't get back up, and someone was holding onto my ankle, and they weren't letting go, and it scared me, and I was at first just gasping for life rather than trying to go fast and get out of there. And then I finally settled into a rhythm, but I was a little shook up, and then once I hit the sand and got out of the water, I was okay.
The threatening skies of the early morning have turned into a beautiful Hilton Head afternoon. Like Gary Clark said, it can be done. Of the more than 1,500 triathletes who started today's race, more than 95% have finished. It's been a good day.